Welcome to SleepyToon. This is your cozy space to unwind, to remember, and to drift into peaceful sleep through the stories that made your childhood magical. Every night here, we revisit timeless cartoons, not with loud noise or flashing color, but with calm narration, soft storytelling, and just a little bit of wonder. Tonight, we begin a new journey. And we're starting with a strange, beautiful little show, one that you might remember if you ever stayed up late in the early 2000s. It's the story of a scared little pink dog, a dog who lives in the middle of nowhere and always finds courage when it matters most. Courage the Cowardly Dog. Before we begin, take a moment with me. Let's slow everything down. Find a comfortable position. Let your body sink deeper into the bed or couch. Let your hands rest, your shoulders drop, and your mind. Just breathe. Soft wind continues, faint creaking of an old windmill. Take a long breath in. Hold it gently. And exhale, softly. Again, in and out. Now tell me, just in your heart, where are you listening from tonight? Are you in your bed? In a dorm room? On a long train ride with your headphones in? What time is it where you are? Is it midnight? 2 a.m.? Just past sunset? Wherever you are. Whatever kind of day you've had, you're here now. And you're safe. You've made time to slow down, to take care of your heart, and to rest. The stars are out tonight in nowhere, and the wind is brushing against the dusty hills. The farmhouse porch light flickers softly. Muriel is in her rocking chair. Eustace is probably asleep with a newspaper on his face. And Courage? He's waiting for you, right by the front door. He has a few stories to tell tonight. Stories about haunted motels, sneaky foxes, and mysterious shadows. So when you're ready, just close your eyes. Let the old CRT screen in your mind light up, and let the first tale begin. This one is called A Night at the Katz Motel. The road was empty. Just sand, sky, and the distant hum of tires on gravel. Courage sat quietly in the back seat. His head rested against the window, eyes half closed, watching the telephone poles blur by one by one. Muriel hummed softly, a sweet little tune she always sang when the road got long. Eustace grumbled behind the wheel, his hands stiff from the long drive. "This blasted heat," he muttered. "Where even are we?" The sky was starting to shift, from orange to deep lilac. The sun had slipped behind the hills. A quiet tension filled the desert air, like something was holding its breath. Courage's ears perked up. His nose twitched. Something fell off. Then they saw it. A crooked, flickering sign in the distance. Buzzing. Glowing. Letters barely clinging to the frame. Katz Motel, vacancy. One of the bulbs blinked off. A storm cloud rolled in overhead. The wind picked up, and the family pulled into the dusty parking lot. The motel was old, painted in faded red and purple. A cactus leaned by the front steps. The porch creaked as they stepped onto it. Muriel smiled. "Looks charming," she said politely. Courage wasn't so sure. His fur prickled. His paws stayed close to Muriel. The lobby door opened with a long, slow squeak. Inside, it was silent. Still. The kind of silence that feels watched. A bell sat on the counter. Muriel tapped it gently. Ding. A moment passed. Then from behind a velvet curtain, a tall, red-furred figure appeared. Thin. Graceful. With long arms, and a cold smile. "Ah," he said slowly. "Welcome to my humble motel." His voice was syrupy, like honey over glass. His name was Katz. He looked down at Courage. Smile. "We've had so few guests lately." His fingers tapped the guest book as he slid them a key. "Room 666. Muriel thanked him kindly. Eustace muttered something about rates. Courage just stared at the key. Cold. Heavy. Old. As they walked to their room, Katz remained behind the desk, still smiling. Watching. The curtain swayed after they left, even though no wind had passed through. The hallway was long and dim. Carpets faded. Wallpaper peeling. Room numbers scratched into brass plates. Room 666 was at the very end. Eustace shoved the key in and turned the knob. The door opened with a groan. Inside, the room was plain, but odd. One lamp, two mismatched chairs, a ceiling fan that turned just a little too slowly. Muriel sat down with a sigh. "Well, this will do nicely for the night." Eustace threw his boots off and collapsed on the bed. Courage sniffed the corners. The walls smelled like vinegar. Something faintly burned in the air like melted plastic. He touched the wallpaper. It was damp. In the corner, a vent. He stared at it. And then, tap, 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 a soft sound. From behind the vent, he leaned closer, pressed his ear against the grill. Silence. Then, a sudden hiss. Courage jumped back. Eustace snorted. "Go to sleep, you stupid dog." But Courage couldn't. That night, rain began to fall. A soft sprinkle at first, then harder, pattering gently on the motel roof. The storm felt close. Thunder rumbled far away. Muriel lay snoring gently in her chair. Eustace, as always, was wrapped in blankets, one foot hanging off the edge. Courage sat by the door, watching shadows crawl across the carpet. Something was out there. Something that didn't feel quite right. He opened the door slowly, stepped into the hallway. It was colder now, and darker. The red exit sign buzzed overhead. Courage moved silently. Paws barely making a sound. Doors lined each side. All closed. All quiet. Then one door, slightly ajar. A dim blue light flickered inside. He pushed it open. The room was empty. But on the floor, webbing. Delicate threads stretched from corner to corner, like something had been building here. Watching, waiting. On the desk, a photo of Katz, standing with spiders, mechanical spiders, with red, glowing eyes. Courage blinked. Then the closet door creaked open behind him. He turned fast. Nothing there, just darkness, and a jar sitting alone on the shelf. Inside the jar, spider legs, still moving. He gasped, slipped, landed in a pile of webs. Footsteps outside, slow, clicking. Courage held his breath. The footsteps passed, then faded. He ran back to his room, heart pounding. Muriel was still asleep. Eustace snored louder than before. The vent was open now, just a crack. And something had moved the curtains. Courage pulled the blanket over his head, eyes wide, waiting for morning. The clock ticked slowly, each second like a quiet knock in the darkness. Outside, the rain grew heavier, drumming against the motel's thin roof. Inside room 666, all seemed still. Muriel stirred gently in her chair. Eustace muttered in his sleep, tossing under the covers. And Courage lay wide-eyed under a blanket. Every creak, every flicker, made his ears twitch. The vent had opened wider now. A slow, cold draft crept out. Something was in there. Courage slid out from under the bed, stepping carefully. He peered into the vent. Nothing but shadows. Then a glint. 2 small red dots. Eyes. Blinking. Watching. He gasped and stepped back, trembling. A low, metallic click echoed inside the duct. He rushed to Muriel and tugged at her arm. She murmured softly, but didn't wake. The hallway was even darker than before. Courage peeked outside. The wallpaper now looked like dried skin, peeling in strange patterns. He tiptoed back toward the room he'd explored earlier. A soft noise behind him. He turned. Just the hallway. Empty. But the air had changed. He could feel it. A thick hum. And then footsteps. Slow, measured. Sharp like claws tapping on tile. Courage darted into the spider room. This time, it had changed. Webs lined the walls like roots, and hanging from the ceiling were more jars. Jars filled with mechanical parts, legs, gears, blinking eyes. In the corner, something moved. A red spider, larger than the others. Its legs unfolded slowly. It crawled down the wall with eerie grace. Courage froze. The spider looked at him. Mechanical joints clicking softly. Then another, from under the bed. And another, from the sink. 3 of them, surrounding him. Courage backed up, reached for a nearby broom. One leapt. He swung. The spider crashed into the lamp, sparks flying. He ran, through the hallway. The lights above him buzzed, flickered, and died one by one as he passed. Room doors creaked open slowly. Empty rooms staring back at him. He could hear tiny metal legs chasing him. Tap, 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 tap. He slid into the lobby. Katz was gone. The desk empty. The curtain behind it rippled. Courage slowly stepped forward. The curtain parted on its own. Behind it a staircase, leading downward. Faint blue light pulsed from below. Courage gulped, but down he went. The basement was silent. Cold stone walls, cobwebs in the corners. And at the center of the room, a strange machine. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Hoses attached to spider legs. Screens showing faces of past guests. Courage approached carefully. A tape deck clicked on. Katz's voice played, "My pets require fresh wiring, and every traveler is another opportunity." Courage's eyes widened. Muriel. He had to get back. He turned, and there was Katz. Standing in the doorway, calm, perfectly still. "Nosy, aren't we?" he whispered. Courage trembled. Katz reached into his coat and pulled out a long silver wrench. "I've designed every wire of their little minds," he said. "But yours is curious, fearful, delicious." The spiders began to descend from the ceiling. 4, 5, 6. Courage spun around and spotted a red emergency lever. He dashed toward it, Katz, lunged, but too late. Clunk! The machine powered down. Sparks flew. All spiders fell, lifeless. Katz hissed, disappeared into shadows. The lights flickered back on in the motel. Rain still pattered, softer now. Courage climbed the stairs, panting. He rushed back to room 666. Muriel still asleep. Eustace still snoring. Everything back to normal. Except the vent was sealed shut. The curtains no longer moved. Outside, the storm began to pass. The motel was quiet again. Outside, the storm had passed. Just a few scattered raindrops fell from the gutters, landing softly on the dusty ground. A light wind rolled through the desert, cool now, calm. A faraway owl hooted once. then silence. Inside room 666, Courage sat by the window. He looked out into the dark. The broken motel sign flickered once more, then faded to black. The worst was over. He looked back at Muriel. She was curled up in the armchair, wrapped in a quilt. Her glasses slightly tilted, her face serene. Eustace mumbled in his sleep, turning over on the creaky mattress. Oh, the room now felt still. Not perfect, not warm, but still. The kind of stillness that meant danger had passed, for now. Courage curled up beside the door, resting his head on his paws. But his eyes stayed open for a while longer, just to be sure. Somewhere in the hallway, a door clicked, then silence again. His ears twitched. Nothing more. Just the sound of dripping water, and the soft hum of morning approaching. Hours passed. The sky outside began to turn pale. Hints of gold broke along the horizon. Birds began to sing, very faintly. A rooster crowed far away, perhaps from a farm, or just a memory of one. Muriel stirred first. She opened her eyes slowly, looked around, puzzled. Oh, Courage, dear. We're still here? She smiled. I had the strangest dream. Courage wagged his tail. Eustace awoke with a snort. Blasted motel didn't even have breakfast, he mumbled, rubbing his eyes. Muriel gathered their things. The air felt lighter now. Sunlight peeked through the tattered curtains. Courage opened the door. The hallway was empty. No footprints, no jars, no spiders. In the lobby, the desk was vacant. No Katz, no bell, just dust. The curtain behind the desk hung still. Courage peeked behind it. Nothing. Just a cracked wall, and a door sealed with chains. He returned to Muriel's side. They stepped outside. The desert glistened faintly in the early sun. The car looked old and sleepy itself, covered in a thin film of dust. Muriel climbed in. Eustace slammed the trunk shut. Let's go, he grunted. The engine sputtered, then growled life. As they pulled out of the parking lot, Courage turned to look back. The motel stood still, silent, watching. Or maybe just abandoned. The vacancy sign sparked once more, then faded. Forever, maybe. The car bumped down the road, wheels crunching over stones. Muriel adjusted her shawl. Such an odd place, she whispered. But I'm glad it's behind us. Courage lay in the back seat. The sun warmed his fur. His eyes grew heavy. He closed them. Finally, truly at peace. The desert stretched on, wide and endless. A new day had come to nowhere. Somewhere behind them, spiders slept. The motel waited for its next visitor. But for now, all was quiet. Courage sighed softly in his sleep, and the screen slowly faded to dusk. Now let the second tale begin. This one is called Cajun Granny Stew. Somewhere in the middle of nowhere, a soft wind stirred the dry earth. The sun had only just peaked above the hills. Its golden light reached the sides of a small, creaky farmhouse where 3 souls lived in strange but loving peace. Muriel was up first. Always early, always kind. The scent of oats and tea drifted through the kitchen like a gentle hug. She hummed to herself, a sleepy Scottish lullaby that filled the little house with calm. Courage was curled up in a sunbeam near the front door, one paw over his nose, ears twitching slightly. A dream danced just behind his eyes. Eustace, of course, was still asleep, snoring like a tractor in the next room. Muriel smiled. Poor thing. So tired from doing absolutely nothing. The clock ticked softly. The radio crackled. A voice came through the static, thick with southern flavor. Morning, y'all. You're listening to Louisiana Lovin', where we slow cook the soul and spice up the morning. Today's feature, Cajun Granny Stew. Courage's ears perked. One eye opened slowly. He didn't like that name. He'd heard it before. On a night where shadows moved wrong, and winds howled with secrets. Muriel didn't seem bothered. She stirred the pot on the stove gently, the spoon clinking. Cajun stew, she said. Now that sounds cozy. The radio continued. Now remember, folks, not just any stew'll do. For true Cajun, granny stew, you need the right ingredients. Long pause. A real live granny. The fiddle music played again. Slow, eerie, strained. Courage sat up, tail puffed. The radio voice crooned. Tender, sweet, and well-aged. Just how old Jean-Bon likes it. The wind outside suddenly shifted. The screen door creaked gently. Courage growled under his breath. Muriel changed the station. What a silly program, she chuckled. Who'd stew a granny? She wiped her hands and walked into the living room. Her rocking chair creaked as she sat. Courage followed her closely, sitting right at her feet, head on her lap. You're such a sweet boy, Courage, she whispered. Nothing scary out here. But out in the desert, something stirred. A figure appeared far in the distance. Tall, slender, moving through the sand without a sound. He wore a long green coat, a crooked hat dot, and a little metal pot slung over his shoulder. The road curved gently toward the farmhouse. He walked slow, patient, like he had all the time in the world. Courage looked out the window and froze. His eyes widened. The stranger was near, too near. Muriel looked up. Do we have company? The screen door creaked again. Knock, knock. Soft, hollow. Courage whimpered. Muriel opened the door, and there he was, Jean-Bon. Morning, madam, he said with a crooked grin. Name's Bon, Jean-Bon. I was wondering if I could trouble y'all for a bit of help. Muriel, of course, smiled kindly. Of course, dear. Come in out of the heat. Courage growled softly. Jean-Bon tipped his hat. His eyes were strange, like two black marbles dipped in oil. But his voice was sweet, too sweet. I'm on a little journey, you see, traveling far to find a perfect stew. A stew. Fit for a king? Muriel offered him tea. Jean-Bon declined. Don't take sugar anymore, he said. Only spice. He placed his pot on the floor gently. The metal clinked. Courage flinched. You got a mighty fine home here, Madame, Jean-Bon said slowly. And such a niece, aroma. Reminds me of my dear old granny. He leaned forward, too close. Say, what's your name, dear? Muriel, she replied cheerfully. Jean-Bon's smile stretched just a little too far. Courage's heartbeat quickened. Something about this man didn't feel right. His coat smelled like firewood and rust. His fingers twitched when no one was looking. And in the reflection of his pot, Courage saw something, a recipe, a list. And at the top of that list, one granny, plump and soft. The radio flickered back to life. You're still tuned into Cajun Granny Stew. Stir it slow, and don't forget the time. Courage gulped. Jean-Bon's eyes glanced at the pot, then at Muriel. Outside, the windmill spun just once, then stopped, and the screen slowly faded to black as Courage took a deep breath and prepared for the strangest night of his life. Jean-Bon sat at the small wooden table. His coat gently brushed the chair. His boots were dusty, leaving tiny footprints that seemed to hum in the floorboards. Muriel served him warm tea anyway, kind as ever. "You must be tired, dear," she said. "The desert sun can be cruel to travelers." "Oh, I've walked through hotter," he said with a wink. "Down south where the steam rises right out of the swamps." He sniffed the air. "But nothing smells as fine as this little home." Courage peeked from behind the rocking chair. His eyes locked onto the pot Jean-Bon carried, still by the man's side, still sealed tight. "Still wrong." Jean-Bon sipped the tea, made a face. A bit mild. You don't got any, say, red pepper or cayenne?" Muriel chuckled. "No, dear. I keep things gentle for my Eustace." Jean-Bon leaned back slowly. "Gentle," he repeated. "I suppose gentle's fine, for now." Courage felt something crawl across his spine. He turned around. Nothing. Just the curtains swaying. Just the sound of the spoon clinking against Jean-Bon's cup. "You must be hungry," Muriel said. "Let me fix you something, dear." "Oh," Jean-Bon grinned. "I'm not hungry. Just yet. You see, I'm a stew man. Slow meals dot old flavors." Muriel nodded. "You sound just like my mother. She believed everything good takes time." Jean-Bon's smile twitched. "Wise woman? Did she make stews, too?" "Every Sunday," Muriel said. "Turnip, carrot, and potato. Oh, and a big splash of kindness." Jean-Bon chuckled. "But it was hollow, like laughter from the bottom of a well." Then he stood. Slowly. The chair creaked. The pot on the floor rattled just once. "May I use your loo?" he asked. "Of course, dear. Just down the hall." Muriel turned back to the kitchen. The radio played another tune, a gentle banjo riff with a sleepy rhythm. Courage padded after Jean-Bon, not too close. The hallway felt longer than usual, like it had stretched to fit the stranger's footsteps. Courage watched him open the bathroom door. But Jean-Bon didn't go in. Instead, he looked around, then crept into the pantry. Courage froze. The pantry door creaked slowly and shut behind him. From within, Courage heard, whispering, paper rustling, and a quiet clink, like metal against glass. He tiptoed to the door, pressed his ear against it. "Inside," Jean-Bon whispered, "dried oregano, garlic root, cinnamon for sweetness." Then silence. Then softly, "Granny meat, slow roasted." Courage gasped. His paw shot to his mouth. He stumbled backward. "Hit a broom." It fell clattering to the ground. The pantry door flew open. Jean-Bon stepped out. He smiled. "Ah, little pink dog. You getting into trouble?" Courage backed up. Jean-Bon knelt. His eyes gleamed. "You're a clever one. I like clever. But clever things can get chewed up in the wrong pot." Muriel appeared behind them. "Is everything all right?" Jean-Bon straightened instantly. "Oh, yes. Your pup was just sniffing about. You got such a curious home." Courage looked up at Muriel, but she was smiling. Always smiling. "He does that," she said. "He's just a bit nervous with strangers." Jean-Bon tipped his hat. "Ain't no stranger here. I'm just passing through." That night, Jean-Bon stayed for supper. He didn't eat much, just watched. Muriel served turnip stew. He stirred it with his spoon, but never raised it to his lips. "This is lovely," he said. But he was staring at her hands, her face, her warmth. Courage sat under the table. His eyes never left the man. Every blink felt dangerous, every shadow stretched longer than it should. Eustace, at last, appeared in his pajamas. "Who's this joker?" he grumbled. "This is Jean-Bon, dear. He's just resting with us for a night." Eustace sniffed. "Smells funny?" Jean-Bon laughed. "That's just the Cajun in me." The lights flickered. The windmill groaned outside. And somewhere deep in the woods, behind the farmhouse, a pot began to bubble. No fire, no cook, just bubbling. The camera fades. Courage curls into his bed, eyes wide open. Jambon's footsteps echo down the hallway, slow and sticky. The pot is still beside him, still sealed. But not for long. The moon hangs heavy over nowhere, and something hungry has found its way inside. The house was still. Too still. The moonlight poured through the curtains, casting slow-moving shadows on the walls. Courage lay awake, his paws tucked under his chin, eyes fixed on the hallway. He had heard something. A whisper, a creak, and then the back door. He got up slowly, his little feet padding silently on the old wooden floor. The house whispered back at him. Floorboards moaned with every cautious step. He reached Muriel's room. Empty. The bed was untouched. Her glasses were gone. Her slippers were gone. But her humming was gone too. Courage's stomach turned. He rushed to the kitchen. The back door stood ajar. A single, muddy footprint just inside. Courage whimpered and pushed the door open. The night outside had grown colder. The windmill spun once, then stopped. Something flickered behind the trees. A small light. A flame. Courage stepped outside. The grass was cold beneath his paws. The desert wind brushed against his ears. And then he saw it. In the woods behind the house, a small fire, a black pot hanging above it, and someone moving slowly around it. Courage crept closer. Through the tall grass, Dot passed the old scarecrow. His breath shallow, his heart loud. He peered through the brush and saw Jambon, coat off, hat hanging from a branch, stirring the pot with a long, twisted spoon, humming. Simmer low, slow and sweet. Boil it down, no need for meat, unless the grannies ripen neat. Courage covered his mouth. Jambon was alone. But the pot, it bubbled with something thick, something Courage didn't want to imagine. Jambon turned suddenly. His face glowed red in the firelight. His eyes caught the moon. Not long now, he whispered. She's in the coop, resting. I like 'em calm before the boil. Courage's fur bristled. He turned and darted back toward the house. His mind raced. He had to find Muriel. And fast. He reached the barn. The doors were closed, but not locked. He pushed them open. Inside, a dim lantern flickered. Dust danced in the air like lazy snow. Chickens clucked nervously from their roosts. And in the far stall, a shape, tied up, wrapped in a blanket. Courage ran forward, pulled the blanket back. It was Muriel. Her eyes fluttered open. Courage? Dear? Is it morning already? He shook his head wildly, trying to untie her. That nice man brought me out here for some fresh air, she said softly. But I think he forgot me. Courage untied the last knot and helped her up. She stumbled, but smiled. You're such a sweet boy. He barked and pointed to the house. But he stopped. There, in the barn doorway, a shadow. Jambon. Now, he said, slowly stepping forward. What are y'all doing out here in the cold? Courage stepped in front of Muriel. Small, shaking, but firm. Jambon laughed gently. Ain't nothing to fuss over, little dog. I just need her. For a recipe. He pulled something from his coat. A sprig of thyme. A stick of cinnamon. And a long wooden spoon. Don't worry. Granny stew ain't painful. It's slow, sweet. Just like she deserves. Courage growled. And then he ran. Not away. but toward the tool shed. He knew what he needed. He needed something sharp, something loud, something ridiculous. Jambon chased after him. "Don't make me come boil you too, pup." His voice echoed through the fields. The fiddle played softly into the distance. Like it was all part of the show. Courage burst into the shed. He dug through boxes, old pots, pans, and broken gadgets, until he found it. The rocket-powered roller skates, and a jar labeled Ghost Pepper Mustard. He strapped the skates on, bit down on the mustard jar, and aimed straight for Jambon. "Time to spice things up," he whispered. The skates roared. Courage shot out of the shed like a comet. Jambon turned just in time to get a faceful of mustard. He screamed, "It burns!" Courage grabbed Muriel's hand and pulled her toward the house. The wind howled behind them. Jambon flailed, stumbling through the field, blinded by spice and rage. Inside, Eustace was still asleep, snoring louder than the storm outside. Muriel sat on the couch, dazed. Courage brought her a blanket. She leaned into it slowly, the warmth making her eyelids heavy. "I had the strangest dream," she murmured. "A stew with me in it." Courage sat beside her, watching the door, listening. The wind outside faded, and Jambon was gone. The night was far from over. The sky above nowhere had grown darker, stars swallowed by clouds that hung low and thick like fog. Inside, Muriel had drifted into sleep, her head resting gently on a warm cushion dot. Courage tucked the blanket around her and stood at the window, watching. He knew it wasn't over. Jambon had vanished, but not given up. Somewhere beyond the hills, past the dry creek bed and the broken windmill, was a place Courage had never dared to go. A place he had only seen in nightmares. The place where the stew was truly made. Courage slipped out into the night. The door creaked behind him like a sleepy yawn. The moonlight glinted off something in the distance. Something round. Something rusty. It was a cauldron. Bigger than any Courage had ever seen. As he approached, the ground began to change. From dust to dampness. From cracked earth to mossy stones. He passed a twisted sign, barely legible. Jambon's Cajun Cookhouse. The wind carried the scent of onions, garlic, and something else. Something Courage didn't want to name. He stepped inside. A heavy door closed behind him on its own. The sound echoed like a bell in a canyon. It was warm in here. Too warm. Flames danced below iron pots. Dozens of them. Bubbling, murmuring, whispering things Courage couldn't quite hear. A staircase spiraled downward into a glowing kitchen, where every tool was hanging from a hook, every surface polished with care. But the air, it was thick, like syrup and smoke. As Courage reached the last step, a voice echoed from above. "So, you came back, pup." Jambon. His shadow fell across the wall, stretched long and tall like a hungry silhouette. "You took what's mine," he said, stepping into the firelight. "That sweet old lady. She was going to be my finest stew yet." Courage growled softly. "Now I got no choice but to add a little dog to the mix instead." Jambon snapped his fingers. The walls shook. The pots jumped. The kitchen rearranged itself, becoming a maze. Flames licked the floors. Steam hissed from invisible vents. The stove behind Courage roared to life and began to move. Courage ran. The world around him twisted. Cabinets slammed shut and opened again, revealing staircases. Ovens opened to reveal brick tunnels. The fridge hummed, then sang a lullaby backwards. Courage darted down a hallway of spice racks, Paprika burst into the air. Cinnamon swirled in clouds. A trail of pepper danced in front of him, leading toward a large door. He pushed it open and entered a room entirely made of bubbling stew. The walls, soup. The floor, soft bread. The ceiling, noodles hanging like vines. Courage tiptoed forward. A carrot snapped beneath his foot. Suddenly, a giant spoon fell from above, slamming into the bread beside him. "Time to stir!" Jambon's voice laughed from above. Courage leaped across 2 islands. He landed on a potato, slid across gravy, caught a ladle swinging from the ceiling and used it to swing to safety. Then silence. He had reached the stew's heart, a small podium, and on it, a book, the secret recipe book of Jambon. Courage opened it. Pages flipped by themselves, drawings of grannies labeled by flavor, ingredients marked with strange runes. And then, a page marked, Final Ingredient. Below it, a drawing of Muriel. Courage's eyes widened. But before he could tear the page, Jambon appeared behind him. "No one reads my secrets and walks away." He raised his giant ladle. Courage ducked. The spoon slammed into the podium. The recipe book flew into the stew wall, sizzled, and vanished. "Oops," Courage shrugged. Jambon growled. "No matter. I've got the recipe in my head." The walls began to melt. The stew surged. The ground cracked, and Courage ran. Through jelly corridors, past swinging tea bags, over rivers of broth. At the exit, a fire, a gate, and behind it, a bell. Courage grabbed a rolling pin, swung it. Hit the bell with all his might. "Dong!" The sound echoed through the lair. The stew stopped boiling. The walls froze. Jambon screamed, "You woke the spirit of the first granny!" The wind howled. A ghostly figure rose from the broth. An ancient, elegant woman made of steam and herbs. She stared at Jambon. "Your stew days are over, boy." Jambon tried to run, but the ground turned to crust. The pots shattered. Oh, and he sank into a puddle of his own spice. The ghost turned to Courage. "Thank you," she whispered. "You've saved more than just one life." With a blink, the lair was gone. Courage stood in the barn again, Muriel still asleep in the corner. Safe. The wind outside had calmed, and a faint aroma of stew drifted through the air. But this time, it was just potatoes. The farmhouse stood quietly under the night sky. The stars had returned, scattered gently across a velvety purple canvas. The windmill turned once, slowly, like it had finally taken a breath. Inside, Courage sat on the porch. His eyes were heavy now. The battle was over. Jambon, gone like the end of a strange dream. Muriel was resting inside, tucked in with her favorite quilt, holding a hot water bottle. Such strange dreams, she had whispered. Stew and ghosts and fiddle songs. Courage just smiled softly. The radio inside flickered back on for a moment. That same Louisiana voice returned, but slower this time. "And that's all, folks. This has been Cajun Granny Stew. May your meals be kind and your grannies stay unboiled." A sleepy chuckle faded out. Then silence. Courage stood up and walked out back. The pot Jambon had left was still there, cold now. He nudged it gently. It tipped over and rolled into the weeds. The final clink echoed, then vanished. From behind, Muriel's voice called, still soft from sleep. "Courage, love. Could you fetch the kettle?" He turned around. She stood in the kitchen doorway, back lit by the soft golden light of the stove. She was okay. She was safe. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon toast. Eustace was still snoring in the other room. The teacups clinked softly, and Courage sat beside Muriel at the table. "You always protect me," she whispered, sipping her tea, "even when I don't know it." He leaned his head gently onto her lap. She stroked his ear with her old, kind hand. Outside, the desert breeze returned. Slow, warm, familiar. The strange tension of the night had passed, like a cloud drifting off at dawn, and above the trees, a soft, golden light began to rise. Morning. Muriel dozed in her chair. Courage sat at the window, eyes half closed. For the first time in what felt like hours, the house was just a house. The stove, just a stove. And the night, just a night. Somewhere far away, Jean Bon's book of recipes floated gently down a river. Page by page, it melted into the water, as if the story was unwriting itself. And whatever darkness had been simmering was now dissolved. The final frame fades out. Muriel sleeping in her rocking chair. Courage curled peacefully by her feet. The clock ticking softly. The world calm. A single line appears on the screen, in warm, sleepy letters. The things I do for love. Now let the third tale begin. This one is called The Shadow of Courage. The sun was setting over the farmhouse. That warm orange glow spilled across the floorboards, turning everything just a little golden. Muriel was humming softly in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup that smelled like lentils and love. Eustace was snoring in his chair, mouth open, glasses sliding off his nose. And Courage? Courage sat by the window, watching the windmill spin slowly in the distance. Everything felt normal, quiet, safe. But then something flickered, just for a moment. A small flicker in the glass pane beside him. His own reflection, staring back. But something was off. It blinked, just a beat too late. Courage tilted his head. So did the reflection. But a second slower, he lifted his paw. The reflection copied him. But there was a lag, a soft echo between action and mirror. His ears drooped. He squinted closer. The reflected eyes were a little too wide, a little too dark. Muriel hummed from the kitchen, unaware. Courage looked back at her, then back at the window. The reflection was gone, only the empty field behind him. The windmill groaned once slowly turning in the breeze. That night, Courage curled up at the foot of Muriel's bed. Rain tapped gently against the windows. A storm was far away, but close enough to lull the farmhouse into deep rhythmic sounds. Eustace snored louder than thunder. Muriel whispered in her sleep, "Such a good boy." Courage smiled in the dark. But then, the mirror on the bedroom wall shimmered, just slightly, and in its surface, Courage's reflection opened its eyes, even though he was already asleep. The reflection stared, and slowly, without sound, it blinked. Once, twice. Then, it smiled. But it wasn't Courage's smile. It was something else. Something deeper. Something that had been waiting. The mirror grew dim again. Quiet. Still. A rooster crowed in the distance, even though it was still very much nighttime. Courage shifted in his sleep, ears twitching, paws twitching, like chasing something inside a dream. Outside the clouds passed across the moon, and the shadow of the windmill swept slowly across the ground, until it reached the house and stayed there, as if the windmill had stopped turning. But its shadow had not. Back inside, the mirror rippled one last time, and the reflection stepped out, softly, without sound. A second courage, but darker, flickering, as if stitched together from fog and memory. It watched Courage sleep, then turned, and walked into the hallway. The clock struck 3 a.m., not with a chime, but with a sigh, like time itself was tired. The morning came softly, like a memory too gentle to hold. Pale light filtered through thin curtains. The smell of toast filled the kitchen. Muriel stood at the counter, humming her same warm tune. Eustace sat with a newspaper over his face, muttering in his sleep, "Stupid dog." Courage blinked awake. For a moment, he didn't remember the dream, but he did remember the mirror, the reflection, the delay in the blink. He shuffled into the kitchen. Muriel handed him a tiny saucer of scrambled eggs. He wagged his tail, but he didn't eat. His eyes drifted to the hallway mirror. Still, normal. But was it? Courage glanced over his shoulder. Just once. Nothing there. But something felt there. The day passed slowly. Eustace went outside to yell at a fence post. Muriel watered her single, stubborn tomato plant. Courage wandered the fields behind the house, watching the clouds drift like sleepy thoughts. That's when he saw it. A second set of paw prints. Right next to his. In the dust. Side by side. But no one else was there. He turned quickly. And just for a second, in the shadow of the windmill, he saw himself. Standing. Still. Facing him. But dark. And slightly off. Its eyes, just a little too wide. Its mouth, smiling. Courage barked in alarm. The shadow vanished. Like fog behind a tree. That night, Courage stayed near Muriel's feet. He didn't wander. He didn't nap. He just watched the hallway. Watched the mirrors. Watched the corners of the room that always seemed just a little too dim. Muriel rubbed his ears gently. "Oh, Courage. You're always so tense, aren't you? Nothing bad ever happens here." But Courage knew better. When the house fell quiet and the clock ticked past midnight again, he crept into the hallway. The mirror was fogged, even though no one had touched it. He reached up with one paw and slowly wiped it clean. Behind his reflection, another one. Almost him. But not. The reflection opened its mouth, but made no sound. Then, its eyes rolled back and it vanished. Courage jumped back, ears stiff. The hallway grew colder. A whisper curled through the air like smoke. He watches. He waits. He learns. The lights flickered. The house shifted like it had sighed in its sleep. Courage backed into the living room. But the television flicked on by itself. Static. Then a blurry image. Courage. Standing in the same room. But behind him, a shadow. He turned quickly, but nothing was there. Muriel stirred in her sleep. "Turn that off, dear?" Courage pressed the power button. But the screen stayed on. The image changed again. Now, Courage sleeping, and the shadow leaning over him. He shut the TV off, unplugged it, sat down, heart fluttering. The windmill outside began to spin, even though there was no wind. Courage peeked outside. There, just beyond the tomato plant, a second Courage, sitting, watching, perfectly still. The stars blinked once. The moon dimmed, and a soft, sleepy voice whispered, "Shadows are born." when we forget to turn on the light. The night air in nowhere was heavy. Not with sound, not with storm, but with something quieter, something just beneath notice. Like the silence itself was listening. Courage sat at the top of the stairs. Moonlight spilled across the floor below. Muriel was asleep in her chair. Eustace hadn't come down all day. In the stillness, Courage began to feel something odd. The walls felt taller. The house, slightly stretched, as if it were a painting being pulled at the corners. He padded down to the kitchen. A spoon sat by the sink. It clinked lightly, even though there was no wind. Courage looked into it, not to see his reflection, but to see what else might be there. His own eyes looked back. But behind them, something flickered. A second pair, wide, and glowing faintly purple. The spoon trembled, then stopped. Courage shook his head and turned. But something odd happened. The table was closer than before. Much closer, as if it had moved when he wasn't watching. He backed away. His paw brushed the wrong cabinet. The pantry door, usually beside the fridge, was now next to the sink. The layout had changed. He turned in a slow circle, and the entire kitchen was different. Still familiar, but shifted. Like a dream pretending to be memory. In the corner of the ceiling, the shadow crouched. Silent, watching. Then it stepped backward, melting into the wall like water. Courage ran back upstairs. The stairs now made a soft sighing sound with each step. Shh. He reached the hallway. The mirror was missing. In its place, a blank, rippling wall. Like mercury pulsing gently in the dark. He reached out a paw. It sank into the surface. Cold, wet, but smooth. When he pulled it back, his paw print remained on the wall for just a moment, then faded. Behind him, a door creaked open. Not from a hinge, from the sound of wood breathing. Courage turned. Muriel stood in the hallway. Courage, love? Did you knock? Her eyes were gentle. Her nightgown fluttered softly. But her shadow pointed the wrong way. He stared. She smiled. It's bedtime, dear. Let's not be silly. She turned and walked away. Her feet made no sound. He followed, hesitant, curious, shaking. They passed the stairwell. He glanced down. A second Muriel sat in her chair, asleep, snoring lightly. He looked back. The hallway was empty. The Muriel who walked with him was gone. Or had she ever been there? He tiptoed back into the living room. The real Muriel stirred. Courage. You okay, love? He looked into her face. Her kind, wrinkled smile. Familiar warmth. This was real. He felt it. But when he looked into the window beside her, her reflection was still staring at him. Even though she had looked away, he blinked. The reflection winked. The clock ticked slower now. Time was losing its grip. Courage curled beside her, resting his head on her slippers. Just for a moment, everything felt safe again, until a single whisper drifted into his ear. He's almost ready. The floor creaked softly as if someone had just stepped into the room. The world had become slower. Every step Courage took echoed longer than it should have, like sound itself was sleepy. The next morning never came. Not properly. The sky outside was stuck in a state between blue and black, like dawn forgot how to rise. Muriel moved through the house with her usual kindness, but something in her eyes felt foggy. She stirred her tea with a fork. She called the fridge, The fireplace. She asked Eustace how his wings were healing. Eustace, of course, grunted. Stupid dog. Then vanished from his chair, mid-grunt. As if a page in reality had been turned and his name was no longer on it. Courage walked through the house in silence, and silence followed him. He paused at a hallway he never remembered existing. A new hallway. Long, narrow, lined with mirrors, none of them showing his reflection. He stepped in. The light flickered. Once and twice. Then, the mirrors came alive. Not with him, but with others. 100 versions of Courage. One smiling, one crying, one snarling, one flickering like static. Each mirror whispered softly, "This is who you might have been. This is who you were once. This is who still watches." Courage backed away, but the hall stretched longer. The doors at the end grew smaller. The floor began to ripple like water, and in the reflection behind him, the shadow stepped out again. But this time, it spoke, in Courage's own voice, but slower, deeper, tired. "I'm the part of you that stayed afraid." Courage turned. "What?" The shadow stepped forward. "I followed you since the cave, since the wind, since the old barn and the mask." Images flashed, quick cuts of past horrors. The mummy, the mask, the floating heads, the haunted slab, all of them. Embedded in the shadow's skin, you forgot us. But I remember everything. Courage trembled. "Muriel?" But Muriel stood in the reflection now, holding a pot of stew, and her eyes were empty, no pupils, just clouds. The hallway folded in on itself, mirrors cracking, images shattering like glass. The floor beneath Courage's paws vanished, and he fell, through rooms, through memories, through a spiral of every scream he'd ever barked, until he landed gently, on his bed, in the farmhouse. The sun was out. The windmill turned. Birds chirped. Muriel peeked in. Wakey, wakey, Courage. A plate of pancakes steamed in her hands. She looked right, real. Courage blinked, sat up. Was it all a dream? A nightmare? Then he looked at the mirror across the room and saw himself still sleeping in the bed. He looked back down at his paws. They shimmered, slightly see-through. "Courage," Muriel called again. But her voice echoed strangely, twice, as if the world had copied itself. And the mere Courage began to smile, just as the walls behind it turned dark. Courage stood in his bedroom, or something like it. The walls were curved now. The ceiling was too high, or maybe too far away. The window looked out into a desert that flickered like static. In the bed, he saw himself, sleeping, peacefully, just like always. He reached out to touch the covers, but his paw passed through them, like mist, like memory. Then, the sleeping Courage opened his eyes, but they were no longer his. They were glowing softly, purple, wide, and ancient. "You're late," the sleeping Courage said. But it was the shadow's voice. The room dissolved around him, melting into a corridor lined with glowing eyes. Each eye blinked, slowly, like falling stars. Muriel's voice called softly from far away. "Courage, can you hear me?" He turned, and the corridor bent with him. A hallway that flowed like a river. Doors opened on both sides, showing moments from the past. The first time he met Muriel, the creepy mask. That slab with Return the slab scratched into it. The mummy that whispered through the walls. Each door whispered, "We made you brave. We made you scared. We made you you." The last door was red. He stepped through it and into the mirror room. Dozens of mirrors, each reflecting a different version of courage. Courage in a cape. Courage as a shadow. Courage with glowing eyes. Courage with none at all. He heard footsteps behind him. The shadow had returned now. But now, it looked more like him than ever before. It spoke. "You gave me fear. I grew strong on your screams. But I am not your enemy. I am your echo." Courage blinked. "Uh-huh." The shadow approached. "We are stitched together, you and me, your terror and my shape." The mirrors around them began to hum. Their reflections merged, flickered, danced. "You fight monsters outside," the shadow whispered. "But I am the one you never faced." The world grew quiet. Courage sat down. For the first time, he wasn't running. The shadow sat too. The two dogs stared at each other. One solid, one flickering. "What do you want?" Courage asked. "To be heard," the shadow replied. Then silence again. Soft, deep, slow. The kind of silence only found in sleep. Muriel's voice returned, warmer this time. "Courage, it's time to wake up, love." The mirror began to crack. Not violently, but gently, like ice thawing in sunlight. The shadow reached out a paw. Courage reached back. Their paws met. And light, warm sunrise light, spilled from every reflection in the room. "Remember me?" the shadow whispered. Not as fear, but as strength. The mirrors shattered, and the windmill outside began to turn again. Slowly, calmly. Courage opened his eyes. He was back, in bed. The smell of breakfast in the air. Muriel humming softly in the kitchen. But something in his chest felt lighter, as if a piece of him he never knew he carried had finally spoken. The window shimmered once, and his reflection winked. The sun had risen. Not just outside, but in Courage's chest. It was the kind of morning where the air feels clean, like it's just been ironed and folded by the clouds. The windmill turned with slow grace. Muriel's laughter floated gently from the garden. Courage stepped outside. The earth felt softer. The grass seemed to glow. Even Eustace's truck wasn't coughing black smoke. But something lingered in the breeze. Not danger. Not fear. Just memory. He walked toward the edge of the field. There, where the corn ended and the sky began, a familiar shimmer awaited him. The mirror dream. Still open. Still waiting. But it wasn't a trap anymore. It was an invitation. Courage stepped through and found himself back inside the dream realm. But it had changed. No more warped corridors. No more shifting mirrors. Just an endless open plain glowing gently with pale blue light. The shadow stood in the distance. Not hiding, not threatening. Just waiting. "You came back," the shadow said. "You remembered me?" Courage nodded. "Are you me?" he asked. "No," the shadow whispered. "But I am everything you survived." The wind picked up. But it was warm, comforting, like a blanket being tucked in around the stars. The shadow walked closer. No flickering now, no distortion. Just a quiet mirror. "You were scared," the shadow said, "but you never gave up. You shook, you panicked, you screamed, but you protected them. Every time." Courage looked down. His paws glowed softly. "You don't need me anymore," Shadow said. "Not in the same way, but I'll always be here. As strength in your fear, as light in your dark." The Shadow reached out, a final time. Courage did too. When they touched, the sky changed color, a deep velvety violet. Stars bloomed like flowers across the ceiling of the dream. A soft bell rang once, and the ground became a lake of reflection. In it, Courage saw Muriel holding him as a pup, the first time he stood up to Katz. That moment he saved Eustace from being taken by a flying saucer. Every act of bravery, not in spite of fear, but because of it. "You were always enough," the Shadow said. "You were always courage." With that, the Shadow knelt, and melted into the ground, not in defeat, but in peace. The windmill in the distance turned once more, and its shadow no longer lingered. It passed like any other, gentle, normal. Courage opened his eyes. Back in the garden, Muriel was planting flowers. "You okay, dear?" she asked. He smiled, a deep, tired smile, but not from fear, from knowing. The house behind him creaked once, like it too had let out a sigh. That night, Courage lay in bed, not twitching, not pacing, just calm. The moonlight glowed on his pink fur. The mirror in the hallway reflected only what it should, and as he drifted on, a gentle voice whispered, "Sleep now, Courage. You already faced the dark." Now let the fourth tale begin. This one is called King Ramses' Curse. The desert was quiet. Still, the stars blinked like they were half asleep themselves, and the farmhouse sat quietly beneath the moonlight, the windmill turning slowly, creaking like an old rocking chair. Courage dozed at the foot of Muriel's chair. She gently rocked back and forth, knitting a scarf for no one in particular. Eustace snored into his newspaper. The clock ticked like a heartbeat. But out on the horizon, something was approaching. Slowly, rolling on cracked tires. A beat-up truck, kicking dust into the midnight air. The headlights blinked, one working, the other just flickering with effort. Inside, 2 men. Nervous, sweaty. In the back seat, wrapped in canvas, a large, flat slab of stone, etched with strange, forgotten symbols. "This is cursed, man," said one. "We shouldn't have taken it." The driver didn't answer. He just pressed the gas harder. "We'll drop it off," he muttered. "Middle of nowhere. No one will know." And so they came to the farmhouse, a single porch light blinking like a tired eyelid. They parked, hauled the stone out, and laid it quietly at the front door. One knocked once, a soft, guilty knock. "Let's go," he whispered, "before something sees us." They didn't even look back, just the sound of wheels on gravel disappearing into the empty night. Inside, Courage perked his ears. "Knock. Knock." He tiptoed to the door, tail low, eyes wide. He opened it. Nothing. Just wind. And stars. But there on the porch, wrapped in old cloth, a slab. Weathered, carved, ancient. Courage sniffed it once. It smelled like dust. And memory. "What's that, dear?" Muriel called from the other room. "Oh, a present? Let's bring it in." Before Courage could bark, she had already pulled the slab inside. "How lovely. Looks like a piece of history." Eustace looked up briefly. Junk." He put his feet on it. The slab hummed. Courage felt it. A low vibration in his paws, like the stone was alive. That night, Courage couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw something. A shadowy figure in golden robes, a crown, and glowing green eyes. Standing just outside the window, Muriel snored gently. Eustace muttered in his sleep. But Courage watched the slab, still heavy, and humming ever so faintly. Then just past midnight, the wind stopped. The stars paused in their twinkling, and a voice, not from this world, echoed through the house. A slow, drawn-out command. "Return. The slab." Courage jumped. But Muriel only stirred gently, and Eustace let out a snore. He looked at the slab again. Nothing had changed. But in the reflection on its surface, he could see a figure, far off, shimmering in the desert wind, watching. The night stretched on. Courage sat at the window, paws pressed to the glass, watching. Out in the fields where shadows met moonlight, the figure stood still, tall, thin, draped in ancient fabric, his face hidden beneath the glow of time. The voice returned. Louder now, but still slow, still sleepy. "Return. These slab." Courage whimpered. His ears drooped. "Muriel," he whispered. But she was peacefully asleep, dreaming of teacups and tartan blankets. The wind picked up. Outside the window, the sky turned green. Faintly, and like a bruise blooming across the stars. Then came the buzzing. First just one fly, then two. Then the sound filled the room. Courage turned to the slab. It was glowing, softly from the carvings. Each symbol pulsed like a heartbeat. Suddenly the windows flew open. Curtains danced wildly in the air. The lamp flickered, then burst. And from the wall came the swarm. Thousands of locusts, gliding through the house, flying in slow spirals, not stinging, not biting, but buzzing. The sound filled the kitchen, the hallway, even the attic. Muriel stirred in her sleep. Eustace snored louder. Courage ran through the house, flailing and barking softly. But the swarm passed through everything ghost-like, unreal, part of the curse. And then, just as suddenly as it came, silence. All the insects vanished. The house fell still. The slab sat in the center of the living room, calm again, silent, sleeping. Courage approached it slowly. The air felt warmer, thicker, like syrup. He leaned close to the surface, and there it was again, a face. Wide golden eyes, thin lips, a long curved chin, staring at him from within the stone. Then the whisper returned. "Oh, this time." Right behind him. "Return. The slab." Courage leapt into the air with a muffled squeak. He landed in the laundry basket covered in towels, only his ears sticking out. Muriel came downstairs, yawning. Oh my, such a mess. She picked up a single fly swatter and started cleaning. "What in the world got into this place?" she muttered. "Probably the wind." Courage peeked out from the towels. The figure was gone. The wind had stopped. The night was silent again. But he knew this was just the beginning. The slab wasn't finished yet. And King Ramses had 3 plagues. Morning never really came. The sky stayed the color of a bruise, pale purple, with veins of green cloud curling like old paint. Courage stood by the window again, his eyes scanning the fields. Nothing. The windmill turned lazily, but the slab still sat in the center of the room. Still, humming, still waiting. Eustace scratched his head and kicked the stone. "Ain't worth 2 cents, he grumbled. Courage winced. The carvings flickered. Then, without warning, the wind stopped again. So did the crickets. So did the ticking clock. Then came the voice, closer now, as if whispered directly into Courage's ears. "Return. This lair." Courage's fur stood up. He bolted under the table. A single drop of water fell from the ceiling. Plink. Onto the slab. Then another. And another. And another. Within seconds, the living room was damp. Water streamed down the walls like the house itself was sweating. Windows fogged. Thunder rolled gently overhead, not with rage, but with warning. Muriel walked in holding a mop. "I don't recall it raining," she said softly. Eustace, newspaper in hand, didn't even look up. "Bah, it's just leaky plumbing." But Courage knew. This was no rain. This was the second curse, the plague of water. Outside, puddles began to form. But they weren't rippling with rain. They were, still, perfectly smooth, reflecting images that weren't there. Courage looked into one, and saw Ramses again. Closer now, arms crossed, silent, watching. Water poured from the light fixtures, from the fireplace, even from the telephone. It dripped from the ceiling in long threads like vines made of glass. Courage skidded through the hallway, slipping on the water. He tried to unplug the slab from the wall, even though it wasn't plugged in. He tried to wrap it in towels, but they soaked instantly. The entire house began to flood, slowly, gently, like a bathtub filling to the brim. But no one was stopping it. Eustace finally stood. "That's it. I'm tossing this junk out." He grabbed the slab. But the moment he lifted it, lightning struck outside. The room flashed with green, and a new image flickered on the slab's surface. Ramses, mouth wide open. Not screaming, just humming, deeply. The sound rang through the walls like a bell underwater. Courage covered his ears. Eustace dropped the slab. "Ugh, weird music box." He trudged off to the basement, muttering about rats and bad wiring. Muriel wrung out her apron. "Oh my, everything's damp," she sighed. Courage, dripping wet, looked around. Water pooled at his paws. He gazed out the window once more. The desert should have been dry, but out there, a river now flowed where none had been. Ramses stood knee-deep in it, unmoving, his eyes glowing like twin lanterns. And just as quickly, the water stopped, evaporated like steam, gone without a trace. The house creaked. Courage panted. The slab pulsed one last time and then fell silent again. But Courage knew. The third and final curse had not yet arrived. It was quiet again. Almost. Too quiet. The kind of quiet where the air forgets to move and the floorboards hold their breath. Courage curled in the hallway, wrapped in a quilt Muriel made long ago. The colors had faded, but the warmth hadn't. He stared at the slab now, dark, still, like it had gone to sleep. But Courage didn't trust it. Not after what it had done. Not after what was still coming. Outside, clouds gathered. Not fast. They crept in like shy ghosts, carrying something with them. A storm that didn't belong to nowhere. Eustace was in the garage now, cursing at a leaky pipe. Muriel hummed a lullaby, gently planting tulip seeds in the mud. Only Courage could feel the shift. The sky above turned gold, then green, then black. The windmill stopped turning, and the earth rumbled. From the slab came a sound, a hum, a vibration so deep it tickled the bones in Courage's ears. He crept toward it. The symbols began to glow again, slowly, one by one. Then all at once, from the distance across the barren field, a tornado began to form. Not a spinning wind, but a spiraling light. It danced in reverse, pulling air in from nowhere. The sand rose upward, the fence rattled like dry bones. The voice returned. But this time, it wasn't a whisper. It echoed, commanding. "Return the slab!" Courage backed away. The slab was glowing like fire now, and in the center of it, Ramses' face, pulsing with ancient power. Eyes wide, unblinking. A king, long buried. Muriel stepped inside. "Courage, are you all right, dear?" She noticed the glowing slab. "Oh, what a strange decoration this is." Before Courage could bark, the window shattered. But not from glass, from sound. A deep vibrating wave passed through the house, lifting chairs off the floor, flickering the lights like candle flames. Muriel was frozen, her eyes glazed slightly. "Oh, I feel a bit dizzy, she whispered. The storm outside took shape, a towering figure in the wind, tall, wrapped in linen, crowned in gold. King Ramses had arrived, not as a ghost, not as a memory, but as a presence. He raised one arm toward the farmhouse, and the wind howled in reverse, pulling leaves inward, bending trees toward the house. The slab lifted off the floor, floating, spinning. Courage leapt up, trying to knock it down, but it flung him softly into a pillow, not to hurt him, just to move him aside. The third curse had begun, the curse of sound. The wind became music, strange chords bending in midair. Melodies Courage had never heard, but somehow remembered. Muriel sat in her chair, calm, still, but not blinking, held in trance. Courage tried to wake her. Muriel. But his voice was muffled, swallowed by the strange frequencies. Then through the hum, another voice, a new one, his own. Courage heard himself say quietly from somewhere outside his body, "You have to give it back." He looked around. No one else had spoken. The house itself seemed to lean inward. Eustace returned. "What's this noise?" he shouted. The moment he touched the slab again, the wind stopped. The sound vanished. Everything paused. And then Ramses' image twisted in the slab. His mouth moved. But this time it wasn't a command. It was a single, haunting sentence. "The final debt is due." A deep gong rang through the air, like a cathedral bell underwater. The lights flickered once, and the house plunged into silence. Silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that presses into your ears like cotton. The house sat frozen in time. Nothing moved. Not even the shadows. Courage tiptoed through the hallway. Each paw step landed softly, like walking across pages of an old, forgotten book. Muriel sat still. Too still. Her knitting needles hovered above her lap, unmoving, not dropped, just suspended. "Muriel?" Courage whispered. He nudged her knee. No response. Her eyes were open, but far away, as if staring at something only she could see. He turned to Eustace, who stood holding a remote. The TV flickered on and off, not showing channels, but grainy visions of Ramses. Each channel whispered the same word. "Return, return, return." Courage unplugged the TV, but it kept glowing. Then the floor beneath him softened. Not wet, not broken, just like fog. His paws sank in ever so slightly, like stepping into a memory. The slab floated gently now, hovering inches off the floor, turning slowly like a lazy planet. Symbols on its surface shimmered like candlelight underwater. Ramses' figure stood just outside the front door, visible through the fogged-up glass, arms folded, watching, waiting. Courage padded to the door, slowly, carefully, and looked into Ramses' eyes. They weren't angry, just empty, like tombs without names. The king raised a single hand, not to strike, not to grab, but to point, toward the slab. Then he turned and walked back into the storm. The wind didn't blow. It followed him, like it belonged to him. Courage looked back at Muriel. She was whispering now. Faint words. The king, the desert, the river of silence. Her fingers twitched once. Courage reached for the slab again. But instead of fear, he felt warmth. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Steady, rhythmic. Maybe, he thought, maybe it's not evil. Maybe it just wants to go home. The windmill creaked, once on, then twice. A steady rhythm, like a lullaby rocking in the background. Outside, the sky began to clear. Not completely, but just enough. A few stars blinked through the clouds. Ramses was gone. For now, Courage curled beside Muriel's chair. She was blinking slowly now, like someone waking from a long, confusing dream. Courage, dear, she whispered softly, brushing his head. Why's everything wet? He wagged his tail once. The quiet had returned. But deep down, he knew it wasn't over. One final act remained. Night had returned, but not the same night. This one felt older, as if nowhere had slipped back into a forgotten memory. The slab still hovered, not glowing anymore, just resting, weightless, timeless. Courage stood near it, his eyes gentle, no longer afraid. Muriel slept peacefully in her rocking chair, the needles resting in her lap again. The window beside her showed a dark, endless plain. Still. Safe. Then came a final whisper. But not in anger. Not a warning. Just a soft, tired voice. Thank you. The wind outside slowed. The farmhouse seemed to exhale. Courage padded forward. He placed one paw on the slab. It felt warm. Familiar. Without a sound, the front door creaked open. A golden glow spilled through the doorway, reaching across the floor like morning light. The slab began to move, floating gently out into the wind, as if it remembered the way home. Courage followed it to the porch, watched it drift across the yard through the desert toward the hills. The wind lifted it higher, slowly, slowly, until it disappeared into the clouds. For a moment, silence. True silence. Not eerie, not cursed. Just peaceful. He turned back inside. Eustace was snoring on the couch. Muriel still slept softly, her scarf draped across her lap like a blanket. Courage curled up by her feet. He let out a small breath, one of relief, of calm. The house creaked gently. The windmill turned once. The stars blinked awake. And the final image before sleep took him. Ramses, far away, nodding once in the moonlight. Not with fury, but with thanks. Courage closed his eyes, and in that moment, nowhere truly rested. The house is quiet. The windmill turns just once, then rests. The front door is shut. The curtains have settled. The stars, they breathe slow tonight. Courage is curled by the fireplace. The embers give off a soft orange glow, not crackling, just pulsing. Like the last sigh of a warm day. Outside, the desert is wide and peaceful. The sand looks like silk under the moon. No shadows move, no ghosts stir. Just stillness. A single owl glides silently overhead. Not hunting, just floating. The world seems to know it's time to rest. Time to let go. Somewhere in the distance, wind brushes across forgotten stones' ruins that remember stories no one tells anymore. And yet they stand. You're safe now. Here in this house with wooden bones, wrapped in the blanket of a quiet world. The night doesn't ask anything of you. Not now. Just rest. Let the hum of silence carry you, deeper and deeper, into the space between stories, where your breath becomes slower, your thoughts softer, and dreams begin to rise like lanterns in a warm sky. You've made it through the tale. You've made it to the stillness. This moment is yours. Stay here. Float here. Fade gently into sleep. The night stretches on, not like a path, but like a blanket, woven from memories and wind. The stars overhead are slow tonight. They blink, not because they're tired, but because they know you are. In the distance, a coyote howls, but it's not a cry of danger. It's more like a lullaby, a soft reminder that even in the wildest places, sleep finds a way. Muriel has dozed off in her chair. Her head leans gently to one side. Her knitting has stopped. The yarn rests on her lap, slowly unraveling into a dream. Courage stirs quietly. Not from fear, but from comfort. He burrows deeper into the blanket, ears twitching once, then still. The slab is gone. The shadows have nothing left to say. Even King Ramses, far away in the dust, has lowered his arms and closed his eyes. The world has folded itself into softness. Every edge is round now, every sound a whisper. If you listen closely, you can hear the walls breathing. The house is alive, not with worry, but with rest. Every board, every brick knows your name. And tonight, they keep you safe. You don't have to hold on to the day anymore. Let it slip through your fingers like water through moonlight. Breathe in. Slow, deep, kind. Breathe out. Like the wind through an open field. You are here. And that is enough. In a world full of noise, you've made it to the quiet. This is where the dreams begin. Far beyond nowhere. There is a field that stretches forever. No fences, no roads, just wind and time. In that field, a single lantern floats, not held by anything. Just drifting, above the grass. Its flame doesn't burn. It hums, a soft, golden tone like someone gently remembering a lullaby from long ago. Every few minutes, a shadow drifts by. Not scary, not chasing. Just passing through. Like a thought you forgot to hold on to. The moon is full now, hanging low and close like it's listening to your breath. The clouds take shapes. One of them looks like courage. Another looks like a chair Muriel used to sit in. They move slowly across the sky, and as they do, they fade gently into stars. You are floating now. Not flying, not falling. Just suspended. Weightless in a memory that never ends. Somewhere nearby, the windmill turns once. Just once. Then, still. The house is miles away now. But you can still hear its heartbeat. Slow, steady. Like yours. Nothing is chasing you. There is nothing left to solve. No doors to lock. No lights to turn off. Just sleep and sky. Muriel's voice floats through the air. You've done enough, dear. You can rest now. And as you drift, the stars blink slower. The earth turns quieter. And dreams open, like flowers beneath moonlight. And now, The sky has turned completely still, not black, but deep, velvety blue. Like a dream wrapped in midnight, the windmill no longer turns. It simply rests, as if even time itself has stopped to sleep. The house, in the middle of all that silence, feels like a heartbeat at the edge of the world. A lighthouse in reverse, not shining out, but pulling you in. Inside, courage sleeps deeply. Legs twitching gently, chasing soft dreams. He isn't afraid anymore. Not tonight. Muriel is still by the window, her chair rocking slowly. But she's not awake. She's somewhere far away. Somewhere warm. A field, perhaps, or a garden, where it never rains too hard, and the tea is always hot. Eustace snores, loud once, then quiet, and the house lets him be. Even the shadows have softened. Outside, the desert glows faintly, like the sand is lit from within. Stars shimmer just above the surface, not in the sky anymore, but beneath your feet. The dream you're in now doesn't need direction. It doesn't need to make sense. It only needs to feel like home. Each breath you take is a little slower now, a little deeper, a little heavier, but not in burden, in comfort. Like sinking into the softest part of a memory. And from far, far away, a voice you forgot you loved whispers, "It's okay. You're safe." The moon dips below the hills. The wind curls into silence. And your dreams begin where the story ends. You are weightless, timeless, loved. Sleep has found you, and it will keep you until morning.